Okay, in this video I'm going to look at the multiplication and division of fractions. I do want to make a few comments, general comments on fractions before I continue with the lesson. Recall that in the last lesson we learned that to reduce or simplify a fraction, we prime factored the numerator, prime factored the denominator, and then of course we canceled out the like factors and we got our reduced or simplified answer. Also want to point out that fractions such as 1/2, 3/7, 5/8, where the numerator is less than the denominator, are called improper fractions. So if the numerator of the fraction is less than the value of the denominator, then it's a proper fraction. Fractions such as 3/2, 7/3, where the numerator is greater than or equal to the denominator, are called improper fractions. And recall that a fraction is an indicated division. So if I take this one right here, for example, 3/2, that actually means 3 divided by 2. Normally we leave it in that particular form because it is simplified, it is reduced, but it is called an improper fraction. I can say 2 divides into 3 one time. Subtract, we get 1. So this is the same thing then. 3/2 then would be the same thing as 1 and 1/2. One and 1/2, which is basically the same thing as saying 1 plus 1/2. But we'll get into addition and subtraction in the next video. So let's clear this. Also want to point out that, remember we said that if you have any fraction, let's take 1/2 as an example, I can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same value. It doesn't change it. So I can say 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6, and 3/6 or 3/6 is the same thing as 1/2, because when I multiply by 3/3, this is actually just 1. Right? These cancel out, so you have the same number over the same number. That's just going to be 1. Any number a over any number a, the same number a, is always equal to 1, as long as the a is not 0, because you cannot divide by 0. In the same way, I can divide a fraction, the numerator and the denominator, by the same number, and I get the same thing back. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So again, those are just facts dealing with fractions. Okay, in this case, we want to look at multiplication of fractions. So let's look at the setup that I have over here. So I have a over b times c over d. Basically, you're just multiplying the numerators. A times c, b times d, and then of course your last step is whatever you get here, you want to reduce it or simplify. Okay. Now, over here I have a divided by b, or a over b divided by c over d. It can be written in this form. Okay. A over b, and then c over d. And then basically, the way I get this step right here is I'm actually multiplying the numerator and denominator by b over a. Or if you want the reciprocal, and actually I want the reciprocal of the denominator. So I multiply this by d over c and multiply the numerator by d over c. So all I'm doing here is multiplying the numerator and denominator of the fraction by the same thing. So it doesn't change it. I'm just multiplying basically by 1. So here the D and the D cancel, the C and the C cancel, and on top I get A over B times D over C. So again, the rule for multiplication, multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, okay? So, and this is actually a times right here, okay? So let me change this to a times. So what this is saying then is A over B divided by C over D becomes A over B times D over C. And then of course then we finish this by simply saying this then is going to equal to A D over B C. Okay. And then of course you want to make sure that this is in simplified form. Okay, so now let's look at some with actual numbers. Perform the indicated operations and simplify. So remember, simplify means you want your answer to be in simplest form or reduced form. Okay, so here I have 9 over 35 times 14 over 3. So notice I have a proper fraction multiplied by an improper fraction. Okay, but that's okay right now. So I could say just 9 times 14 is 126, and then 35 times 3 is 105. And then I would have to prime factor the numerator and prime factor the denominator and then do my cancellation. And that's how I would get this answer right here. Okay, but what I suggest, and this is what you're going to do in algebra, because if these, think about it, if these numbers here are algebraic expressions and then you multiply that and then you want to simplify it, it's going to get messy. So suggestion then would be to multiply fractions, prime factor each numerator, prime factor each denominator, and then cancel the like factors. Okay, so for example, the 9 I would write it as in prime factors, either 3 squared or 3 times 3. The 14 I would write it as 2 times 7. Okay, remember we went into prime factorization in an earlier video. The 35 I would write it as 5 times 7. And then you're allowed to cancel one factor on top with the same factor in the denominator. Okay, so this 3 then can divide out with this 3 right here. This 7 can divide out with this 7 right here. And then, and remember, when you divide these out, these actually become ones. So this is a 1 here, and 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. And then you multiply what you have left. So you got what? 1 times 3 times 2. That's 6. Okay, and then in the bottom, we got 5 times 1 times 1. That's 5. So we got 6 over 5. Okay, so that's the answer. It says simplify. Doesn't say write your answer in as a proper fraction. So we leave it as an improper fraction. But it is simplified or reduced. That's your answer. Okay, let's clear this. Okay, again, this one we have 3 fractions and it's all multiplication. So again, if I just wanted to multiply this out, I could say 6 times 17 is 102 times 1 is 102. Okay, bottom 17 times 38, and then multiply that by 3, and I get 1938. And then my next step then would be to reduce this. But notice I get large numbers. I would prime factor the numerator, prime factor the denominator, and then do my cancellation. Okay, but again, instead of multiplying, I'll suggest you prime factor first, and then do your cancellation. So 6, I write it as 2 times 3. 17 is just stays as 17. Can't factor that anymore. So remember, the 6 is replaced by 2 times 3. The 17, nothing I can do with that one, so I leave it. Okay. And the 38, I replace it by 19, or 2 times 19. Okay. So now we're just working with the prime factors. Okay. So again, the 2 here divides out with this 2 here. This 17 divides out with this 17, or this 17, okay. And then this 3 here divides out with this 3 over here. So what do I have left? I have left just 1, 1, 1, and a 1. So it's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And the bottom, everything cancels out to become 1s except the 19. 1 times 19 times 19. So the reduced answer is 1 over 19. Okay. You do the same thing when you get into algebra, except in algebra you'll be dealing with algebraic expressions. So the factoring and the simplification is going to get a little bit more involved. Okay, so clear this. Go to the next one. Okay, so this is a division. So if it's a division, you follow the procedure. So basically what we said over here then. And remember this was the times here. We said if you divide in 2 fractions, basically what this rule basically tells you here is you invert the divisor, okay, and then multiply, or multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. Okay, A over B divided by C over D becomes A over B times D over C. Okay. So here, 3 over 8 divided by 8 over 3. We invert the divisor, as is the 8/3, or the same thing as taking the reciprocal. So that becomes 3/8 times 3/8. And on this one again, the 8 prime factors into 2 to the 3, or 2 times 2 times 2. The same thing with the other 8, 2 to the 3. But there's no factors in common with any numerator denominator, so that's going to stay the way it is. So in this case, we just multiply 3 times 3, we get 9. 8 times 8, we get 64. This is your reduced answer. Okay. So that's pretty much all there is to multiplication and division of fractions. We'll still be dealing with that as we go into the next lesson, which deals with addition and subtraction of fractions. So that concludes the video. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.